So what you have in front of you are what are called partial notes. It's kind of dumb for me to make you copy every single word. You'll notice, however, that there's a lot of white space around the notes, partial notes. There's a whole lot of space around them. That's so that you can write down the other stuff that we talk about, other stuff that I draw. If you are just filling in the blanks, that doesn't count as taking notes. Okay, so there's a whole lot of other stuff that we're going to talk about that I want you to write down. So, all living things do share some things. This is the start of your list, so I'll let you copy these. So those are the three you came up with, but we're going to talk about all of these. So we're going to start off talking about cells. How many of you have seen a cell? Okay. Where? Under a microscope? Okay. All living things are made of one or more cells. So these are actual pictures of individual bacterial cells, those things there. This is an individual cell. Those are unicellular organisms. They have one cell. That's the whole shooting match. That's all they are, is one cell. Uni means one. Unicycle, unibrow, means one. Uni means one. So a unicellular organism just has one cell. That's its whole body. But then we start to get up into bigger stuff. So this thing here is called, oh, this is such a great word. I love this. Volvox. I'm going to start a band and call it Volvox. Because, you know, you could. So Volvox is a bunch of individual cells, but they work together. They're still one celled, but they're sort of living together and doing special jobs. They're starting to have special jobs. That's this idea of specialization. Once you get up into a more complicated critter, so we'll get rid of the name Volvox here.
What did you say, Volvox?
Volvox is this organism right here. Okay? And it's actually a bunch of individual cells that are working together. So it's not a multicellular organism, but it's starting down that road. This thing is pretty complicated. It lives in water. If you've swum in a pond, you've probably brushed up against one. It's very tiny. You wouldn't see it with the naked eye, but it's made of multiple cells. They have special jobs. I'm not doing anything to dispel the paranoia about swimming in ponds and creeks and lakes. You should go swim in ponds and creeks and lakes. It's good for you. Its cells do different things. And we get more complicated. We can get as complicated as, hey, a plant like your beans. We can get as complicated as a smallmouth bass. That's a pretty nice fish there. In those things, all the cells are specialized. They have special jobs. But the thing that's true, whether we're talking about bacteria or bean plants or earthworms or bass or Volvox, is that those cells are always tiny. Why? What do you think, James? In terms of possible reasons. So they can fit where they need to go. Okay, that's one reason a cell could be small. What else? Yes, ma'am.
So that they can, do big things. Kind of
Explain.
Like, they're small because they're really big. They do.
You know, we said maybe because there's so many, if they were really big, they'd be too big. Like, you know, they have to fit in small places, and we have to fit a bunch of them. Well, who says we have to fit a bunch of them any place? Maybe if they were bigger, we'd just have one. Maybe if they were really big, you would just have 3 cells in your whole body and not 50 trillion. You got something? Many hands make light work. Is that the expression? Okay, so, and of course they don't have hands. We know that. What else? Why else? You know what? I'm going to pause this, and I want to go back to something that you guys said when we were talking about something all living things have. What is that? It's a cell. Or a fried egg with a really small yolk. But it's a cell. So, all living things, you said, had some kind of barrier between them and the outside. The barrier between you and the outside is your skin. Outside your skin, it's not part of you. Inside your skin, it probably is. Okay. Well, cells have a barrier too, and it's called a cell membrane. You may remember this from some other part of science. I would, yeah. So, you guys all said that that every living thing takes in energy. Some of you probably took in some energy at lunch today. How do you get energy into your body? Via your mouth. You don't shove the pizza up your nose. You don't stick it in your ear. You don't soak your feet in it. So you take your nutrients in via your mouth. When you get rid of your wastes, you have openings for that as well. What about this cell? How does it get food in? It's got no mouth. Oh dear. You got an idea? I'm happy to hear it. It absorbs it through the membrane. Yeah, actually. That membrane. So, how many of you have ever seen a balloon? If not, you have homework. Fill it up with air. Leave it overnight. What happens? Yeah, it starts to deflate. It gets little. My daughter is disappointed in this every single time. But that balloon membrane is supposed to hold the air in, right? Why does it get smaller? Air escapes. That balloon is not as solid as you think it is. There are tiny little holes in it. Well, there are tiny little openings in this cell membrane too. And they actually let things in and out. So cell membranes are what we call semi-permeable. What does semi mean? That's uni. Semi. Like, in the morning before I've had my first cup of coffee, I am semi-comatose. Semi is partly. Comatose means you're in a coma. Before I've had my first cup of coffee, you could mistake me for someone in a coma. That's why I drink coffee. Semi means partly. Yeah, half, partly. Because they are two halves that you put together. So, okay, semi means partly. What does permeable mean? You may not have encountered this word before. It means stuff can go through it. So, you're wearing a t-shirt, you go run a bunch of times around the gym, you start to sweat. Is your shirt permeable to sweat? Yes. Sweat will end up on the outside of your shirt. It will come through the fabric. If we put you in a shirt made of a garbage bag and did the same thing, would that be permeable to sweat? No. So permeable means stuff can go through it. So if that cell membrane is semi-permeable, it means it means some stuff can go through it. So some stuff can come in and out, some stuff can't. But the key is that every single thing that cell needs has to come in or out through that cell membrane. Okay, Moser, seriously, really? You still haven't told us why they have to be small. So I don't care if it's semi-permeable, blah, 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 t-shirts and sweat. Why does a cell have to be little? Well, we've been talking about cells like they were flat. But really, they're not. Imagine a water balloon. That's a better representation of a cell. And we can think about it as a cube. We can sort of square up that little water balloon and say, well, let's imagine that it's shaped like that. So if we have a cell that has an edge that's 1 centimeter, so it's 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter, 6-sided cube, and we have one that's 4 centimeters by 4 centimeters, and then we have a really big one. We'll say that's 6 centimeters. Okay. We can have an even bigger one, but we'll stop at 3. So what part of that cube is like the cell membrane? Well, what part of any of those cubes? The surface of the cell is like the cell membrane, because the cell membrane is the surface of the cell. So if it's a water balloon, it's the balloon, and the inside is the inside. So we can figure out the surface area and the volume. So surface area is what? Length times height times the number of sides. We have 6 sides, yeah? So for our little 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter cutie, for our 1 centimeter cube, the surface area there is 6. Well, the volume is length times width times height. So there it's 1 by 1 by 1. So the volume of that cube is 1 cubic centimeter. This cell has got a lot more volume than it does surface area. Agreed? Okay. What about our 4 centimeter cell? So surface area, 4 times 4 is 16 times 6, 96? Yeah. Four by 4 by 4, what's that? 4 times 4 is 16 times 4, 64? 64. Huh. So here you've got 6 times the surface area that you do the volume. It's as if for every 1 person inside the cell you have 6 people on the outside working to get stuff in and out. That's a pretty good ratio. Well, here this is 1.5 times. So it's as if for every 1 person living in the cell you have 1.5 people working to get stuff in and out. What if we go to our 6 centimeter cell, and I'm just going to give you this. 6 times 6 times 6, what, 216?
Yeah.
Okay. Also 216. For every 1 person, 1 unit inside the cell, we've only got 1 working to get things in and out. If it gets much bigger than this, guess what? We now have more volume than surface area. So cells have to be little because if they weren't, they would drown. Staying small helps keep the surface area to volume ratio manageable. The bigger they get, the harder it is. Josiah, are you putting things away? Are you done? This slide? As long as that surface area to volume ratio stays in a good range, they can get all the stuff they need in and out of the cell. If they're too big, the cell either starves or drowns in its own waste because it can't move stuff in and out effectively. It loses the ability to do that. Okay, here is the agenda for tomorrow. Now you realize tomorrow we're on shortened periods. So we're only going to have a half an hour tomorrow. And there will be a sub tomorrow. I will leave instructions. You're only gonna measure your plants tomorrow. I would advise that you don't treat them tomorrow. Okay? Woo! They do that a lot. They're tricky. Have a good night.